Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's now 2:46. I know we have Brandy, who was so kind to join us and step out of a Zoom call. And so I just want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time. So we'll start with roll call. Both districts are present. The notice of the meeting was properly posted on June 24th, 2024. We'll start with number 1, approval of minutes.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So on number 2, we tried to create a agenda item that was very broad, but I went ahead, I don't see, is Lisa here? I went ahead and added an additional item for number 3 to discuss court services OR bond employees. And so I didn't know if that could be combined. I don't see her here. So we'll just proceed with that discussion of the court services OR bond and number 2 as well. And then if we can, and then strike number 3 when we get to it. So since we have so many guests here today and many items to discuss, we are going to start with the discussion around our OR bond employees in regards to their supervision and location. And so we have lots of different, we have Brandy here with President and CEO of the Detention Center. We've got Vicki Bahana here, who's representing, of course, our district attorney. We also have team here to help discuss when we get to the point of our team and Shine contracts. And so just want to begin the discussion probably around Karen and Brad. Would you like to start the discussion out in regards to what we have experienced so far? I'll volunteer you first. And the discussion really is where they're at, where we're at on number of employees, and then where they need to, their final location reside moving forward, whether it is with the district attorney or whether it is at the detention center under the supervision of the jail trust and Brandy.
I handed out to all 3 of you up front a current up to date on the employee statuses, and I'll give one to Ms. Bahana.
Okay, and so I'll request a motion to receive report.
Motion to receive. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So currently we have approximately, I'm going to say 5 of the original court services OR bond that have been asked to come over to the DA. And so most of our questions that we have is going to be deciding, once that's decided, where they're going. Because we'll need to talk about contracts, we'll need to talk about fees, we'll need to talk about files. But that all depends on what's decided on that item of what we're doing with them.
Okay. Do we want to take an approach of hearing what that would look like from the detention center side if they were moved over to your supervision, and then talk about what it would look like if it was moved over to the DA side? Is that the best way, do you believe?
Yes.
Discussing it so we can weigh both options and talk about pros and cons and make a decision. Would you like to start, Brandy?
So whatever is decided, if you decide that they're better suited for the detention center, we're ready to accept them. We have office space available. We do have an OLEDS terminal. We would have to order another OLEDS terminal, which is not a big deal. And that's pretty much where we stand. We don't have any issues with it. I know that they would be able to keep their county benefits, but from an operational perspective, we would be able to hit the ground running with them. I checked with our OLEDS terminal, the TAC, and he said that as long as they are currently certified, when they transition over, there isn't a wait period. The biggest thing for me is making sure that we are able to do a thorough background on them, because it's one of our requirements to work in the detention center. And where I envision them is up front in the booking area, so they can capture people as they're being booked in. And so they would have contact with the residents that are coming in. So that's pretty much.
How many employees do you think that you would need total in order to be able to serve at the detention center?
You know, I don't know. For this specific function,
We
it would
currently-
be one of those things where if we have 4 or 5, we look at it and see, you know, I don't even know fully what their duties would entail. So that, I mean, we could start with that number, and if it seems like we need to increase, then we could approach you all about that. If it seems like we could do it with less, then we'd certainly have that conversation as well.
And if you were able to do it with less, you would have other availability over there for them to do other things, correct? You could
Absolutely.
cross-train and stuff.
Absolutely.
Now, when you mentioned that you would need another terminal,
Mhm.
the terminal that you currently have, if we transferred those folks over there and they're, you know, they're then licensed through you guys to be able to do that, would you be able to get by with just the one terminal short term? Because I think that's really what takes some time is the terminal piece, not necessarily the employees. But would you be able to continue functioning the way you have been
Mhm.
and take this on short term with just the one terminal until you get the second one online?
So we actually have 4 terminals, is my understanding, because we also do them in our investigations, and then our backgrounds, and then we have some for the releasing booking area. We would have to order one more just so we have the ability to run our own reports when we're doing releases. In the interim, if they were down there with them, then we would have either them help run those reports for us for releases, or we would run our own releases and just kind of piggyback off of. It's not like they need 24/7 access to the terminal. The people that I have currently employed that do the releases, we just check everybody for wants and warrants before we release it. That's the only purpose that we have for that terminal down there. And so it's not like it's somebody sitting there full time, that's their only job. It's something that they need periodically throughout the course of their duties. So I don't know that it would be a big hindrance to be able to kind of go back and
So
forth.
you've got a workaround now, and then I
Mhm.
think for the additional terminal, if we went that direction, we could just look at taking the terminal that they've been using, if it is adequate, and start the process to have it registered to you instead of registered to court services. Is that correct? So we wouldn't necessarily have to go out and buy a new terminal and hardware. We could potentially just transfer the one that they've been using.
I believe so.
Okay.
I'm not an OLEDs expert. I just going off of what my TAC told us. So, but I don't foresee any issues moving forward if they were to come over to us. I don't think that there would be any gaps, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
And some of the questions that Karen had and Brad had, it was in regards to contracts, and so there are some contracts that we need to determine, you know, moving forward. They use Allied for ankle monitoring, OpenFox for message services, Connexus, is how you say it, for database software. They've got a couple printers with Stanley, and then a water service that you probably already have. And so any of those an issue, or vendors that you already contract that you would just need to increase costs or would save on costs?
I don't know that we have any of those contracts in place other than the water service, which is, inconsequential. But the other 3, I'm not sure that we have any contracts with them. But so we would have to get a contract with them and negotiate that. And of course, we would need the cost to cover whatever that expense is.
And if memory serves correct, I think that Connexus was the software that court service was utilizing to contact participants in a program to let them know of upcoming court dates and to kind of touch base with them as they were monitoring them. So I don't know that that would be
Same thing
needed
with
on
the-
the OR side, or not OR side, on the piece where we're just, you know, running the inlets report.
Yeah, and same thing with the OpenFox, since it's a.
I'm sorry, Karen.
Sorry, Karen. Yeah, OpenFox. Do you want to come up?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Connexus is that software that they got a few years ago, thinking it was going to be really robust and help on that, and then it turned out that it was a little bit more limiting than what we thought. But I think those software pieces are mostly exclusively used for the monitoring of the caseload once they've been approved by the judiciary to be released. I'm getting heads nodded, so, okay, thank you. So I don't think they would need those contracts.
They would probably eliminate some of them with maybe current processes that you have. But I just wanted you to be aware that those are the contracts that Karen's been asking us, what do we do with these contracts? And so, but just wanted you to be aware.
I'm assuming you could absorb the water. With
Yeah.
your current.
Yeah, you can take care of the
I
water.
guess.
Any other benefits to you retaining those services and having the employees there?
The only thing I can think of is just the efficiency by which they can perform their functions, and we can get people moving through the system much more quickly. Having somebody on site would definitely be a help to us. If it is a situation where maybe they don't have a lot to do in one day, I would like the opportunity to augment our current staff, whether that's just helping with releasing or booking, not necessarily having inmate contact, although I think it would be to our benefit if they, not that I would force them, but if they would be willing to go through an academy so they could be of greater assistance. Because it's my understanding that when they go through the evaluation process now, they don't necessarily have to have that contact with a resident. They just go off of their criminal history. So there's not really any other benefit to having them go through an academy other than just being more efficient in our own operations as far as just detention, booking, receiving.
So some opportunity for maybe professional growth. And
There is.
okay.
Well, I think having them there, whether whoever they were supervised by,
Mhm.
you know, whether it was you guys or whether it was the Board of County Commissioners or whether it was the DA's office or the Sheriff's office, those are all the entities that we've discussed in the last couple months as a potential. Would it be fair to say that whoever was supervising them, if they were physically located down there, that it might help on your operations from the standpoint of what I kind of envision potentially being the case? And a lot of this is based on some assumptions, so I could be completely off base here, but if those individuals were down in the booking area and somebody was brought in, inlets was pulled by those individuals, and instead of somebody going straight up and you guys issuing clothing and giving them a boat and moving them upstairs, having to transport them up there, if they stayed in holding down there while this process worked out and we got it over to the judge, you may be able to get notification and release that individual before all of that other stuff would occur. Is that?
I think there's definitely some potential for that, absolutely. And it might also be helpful in cases where people, we know that maybe they just need services. They're low-level offenders and they need services, but typically what happens now is if they get booked in and there's a weekend, they're going to have to wait. We do have some partnership with the district attorney and the judges and the public defenders, and they try to get people out on the weekends, but being able to do that even around the clock would be helpful. But yes, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Appreciate you being here to answer any
problem.
questions as they come up. No problem. Karen, did you have something to say?
Yes, when we're talking about going to the DA versus going to the detention center, when we looked at the payouts, if they go to the DA, we're going to be paying out about $70,000 in their annual leave and comp time. The other thing is we have one,
What was that number again?
it's about 70,000.
70?
Yes, sir. The other thing is there are two of those employees that are like 6-7 months from being vested. So if they go to the DA, they will not be vested and they will lose that time in that retirement.
Okay.
Thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Anything else you want to add from your experience of supervising? And we appreciate your efforts.
Not at this time.
Thank you.
District Attorney Behena? Colton, do you have any other questions? I'm sorry.
You're good. I didn't have any questions.
There has to be. That's safe. Okay, so I might derail the discussion real quick. I think the commissioner would like to discuss the Shine part in community sentencing, community service piece, and the equipment and the logistics of that contract. Can we talk about that real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I just was going to offer for background because of the equipment. In the past, first when we outsourced CASA, we just completely went to a nonprofit. There wasn't even a contract anymore. We closed the county department, went to CASA, that's a nonprofit, and then we still gave them computers and provided IT. In fact, they had an oklahomacounty.org email address until a time that was
For a
phased
long
out
time.
for quite a while. And then in the issue of community sentencing 9 years ago, it went over, and then at some point, and Chris could tell you, we gave them a van, which they have still, and they insure the driver, but it's still a county vehicle on county assets. And then with the computers we sent them, same thing. Even though they're defunct and don't work anymore, Chairman Bob Ravitz of the Court Services Advisory Board instructed them not to throw anything away, so they've got them all over in the basement over there, and they still do the inventory tags on them every year. And we probably ought to have those surplus because I don't even think they're operable anymore. But I just feel like there's a precedent and there's a way that we can go ahead, and the easiest thing is for them to have the equipment and just roll over, just like all things on Monday. They just need the insurance for the driver, in terms of that allowing the county to still be able to perform the maintenance like the sheriff's fleet service is doing now, and that just be the workers' comp part that they'd have to cover on their insurance for the drivers, just like they do for community sentencing.
So we do the repairs on the vehicles for community sentencing?
I don't know about the repairs, but we do for.
Chris?
I would think we could, because it's a county.
So one other thing that I also learned about that, and because this is a major topic that we need to discuss in regards to the transfer for Shine. When I was visiting with Jamie and Chris, they also mentioned that they pay for the insurance, but then they bill the county for that. Is that correct? And I may have misunderstood that
No,
wrong in our
you-
many
you didn't.
conversations this morning.
No, there's a lot going on. So, two points of clarification. The original agreement was that we would reimburse the county, or we would turn in the invoices for the insurance, the maintenance and the insurance of the vehicle that belongs to community sentencing, annually as we did that. That was the original agreement. But that particular, to clarify, it's not a van, it's a journey. So it's an SUV. It's used for home visits primarily. The reality is that the council, Oklahoma Community Sentencing Council, said if there is not an immediate need for that vehicle to be used for community sentencing, team could use it for pretrial services and some other things directly that we do. It all has to be direct services. So because we, from time to time, use it for other purposes, we have just assumed all of the insurance, all of the maintenance ourselves. We've never turned in the invoice because we're technically using it for things that the county's not paying for. The distinction would be we've only used the computers that we inherited for community sentencing for community sentencing. We would only be using the equipment for Shine, exclusively for Shine, and nothing else. It would all still be solely for those purposes. So we would very much like to have the opportunity to ask that the county provide routine maintenance, or at least be reimbursed for the routine maintenance if we have to provide it, and the insurance, since that equipment will only be utilized for that purpose.
To that point, what is currently done now is that it's done by the sheriff's fleet service out of the substation, and then they bill the Shine account. So the Shine is what pays for the Shine repairs and maintenance.
Yeah, so any of the expenses related to the upkeep would come out of the funding that's available for Shine.
Yes, sir.
is there, with this being a current county program and us and the county choosing to move it to another entity, would we be able to transfer ownership of the equipment?
I don't.
Generally speaking, I know the answer to that is no, but I didn't know, since we're moving a function that we've been doing. I just, my biggest concern is if, we have an accident down the road and then it's, well, was the accident because the driver didn't hit the brakes fast enough? Or was the accident because the vehicle that's owned by somebody else wasn't maintained properly? And then you get a bunch of this and a lot of confusion, and so.
Right. There are many different ways to go about doing this type of thing, but as far as just a straight out transfer or gift to another entity, the answer to that question would be no, that would not be recommended by the district attorney's office. However, with regard to all of these agreements and this equipment, obviously your concerns about liability is at the top of the DA's list, because when those lawsuits come in, they're ours. Anytime the county owns a vehicle, whether we have it under a contract, whether it's a contract for lease or a contract for sale or just a MOU allowing them to use this because it's part of the SHINE program, which is a county program, whatever the MOU does to transfer these vehicles for use, if the county is still the owner of those vehicles, you are always going to be a party to a lawsuit if that vehicle is in an auto accident, just like it would be if, Jessica lent you her car and you were in an accident, she's probably going to be added into that lawsuit. So anytime that the county still retains ownership interest of that, once again, the issues of maintenance and all of that. And also what happens at the end of the life of these vehicles. At some point, is the county going to replace those vehicles and continue to provide those as part of the SHINE program? All of these issues can be worked out. Like I said, it's all a matter of transparency and openness in the contracting procedures. But, obviously, if you wanted to quote unquote sell, lease purchase this agreement, these vehicles to teams, that agreement of payment of what their services are, we could carve out an amount that they pay for those vehicles, and then they can obtain ownership of it. There's all sorts of different ways to do this. It's just about what your comfort level is on assuming what liability you want to as the owner or the leasee of the vehicles to them. But as far as just a straight out gift or transfer, I would not recommend doing that, because we do have state statutes that we have to follow with regard to how county property is distributed or dissolved of.
Okay. Do you have a preference?
So I'm open to whatever the best solution is. To the commissioner's point, we obviously would ensure the operator who would become a team employee, and we would want to be able to put in a contract whatever we need to say that if an accident occurs and it is the fault of the operator of the vehicle who is a team employee, team would receive responsibility and release the county of any additional responsibility. I know that gets a little bit gray, but I'm only suggesting that to say that if there is a way for the county to maintain the property, just because I believe that the bulk insurance rates that the county provides and the cost of maintenance given the infrastructure the county has likely will be much more affordable. And it's equipment that is technically owned by the county for a county purpose. It's just that the entity managing that program is contracted with the county instead of being the county itself.
Well, as far as the property insurance, we're self-insured. So on a vehicle like that, I mean, we really don't have an insurance policy on it. So
Precisely, which is what would start to drive up the cost of the program if this equipment transferred. It's the cheaper way to run this program if it stays ours.
So what happens if an employee of team is driving the van is totaled due to an accident, or there's $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 worth of damage? The county is going to be out that. money to replace it.
Unless it's, well, if it was a county employee, we would be anyway.
Right, but this is not, we're not talking about a county employee. We're talking about an employee of a separate entity.
I get it, but it's going to be the cost. It's Peter and Paul. We're paying them to run the program, so they're going to just turn around and bill us back again anyway.
The kind of contract we're talking about would be like an indemnification clause where the team would indemnify us for any damages created by them. The issue that I have right now, and I don't have an answer for you, is if, when we were talking about insuring this vehicle and having them reimburse, I'm clear on, them using the vehicle and having that reimbursed. I'm not real clear on the insurance piece, being able to insure that vehicle under county, because county technically, we're self-insured, right?
That's what
So we're self-insured. So to me, a team being a non-for-profit private entity that is not government related and is a separate entity, I have questions myself over this insurance piece that I would probably need to research before I could get back with you on that. But my initial reaction is we cannot extend our governmental tort liability to a third-party contractor. I don't think that we could do the same with the insurance, simply because we're self-insured. So like I said, I would think that an insurance policy would be necessary in this. Now, whether that can be part of the, SHINE is a program, it is a county program, it has its funding. I think all of these pieces can be put together where that is covered. That's part of the operations and it's a legitimate expenditure, but that private insurance for that private entity, that, like I said, we will just have to cover that in the contract that's paid to, the amount that's paid to team will have to encompass all of this. But like I said, I'm very concerned about the insurance piece because we're self-insured.
Well, and the contracting piece gets into a question that I had. I had kind of thought from the beginning the direction that we were going to go was going to be a contract similar to what we have with other providers like OSU Extension or something like that, to where it was they're going to take this over and they're going to receive funding. The contract that we currently have through the end of this fiscal year, it talked about SHINE in the contract with the pretrial. It was all kind of in one, and it talked about team negotiating contracts and that kind of stuff. I would think that what we were going to do was take the money that we have in the SHINE account, transfer that to them because they're going to need startup costs to operate this, and then the contracts that they negotiate or that are negotiated would be negotiated between whether it's the zoo or the city of Oklahoma City or Del City or whoever. It would be between team and that entity, and then when that entity paid for those services, the money would go to team, not come to the county and then turn around and go back out to team via a contract mechanism. Because then when we get into contract issues, if team's not happy with one of the entities that they're contracted with, if they're not actually contracted with them, if it's the county and they want out because they're, being too burdensome, but the entity doesn't want out, they want you to stay in it, or vice versa. The entity is not happy with you and you're happy with them, and then we're just stuck in the middle just because we negotiated a contract. I think that if those contracts were directly between them and who they're providing the services for, it would clear up a whole lot of the issues.
To that effect, I think, obviously, without seeing, the structure in the contracts itself to be able to, visualize how this is going to look. But as far as the piece that you were talking about them using the SHINE budget, the SHINE fund is a statutorily created county fund. So once again, I know in my mind right now, without having done the research, and I will do the research when I get back, that needs to, the component of the Shine account, what goes in and goes out of that still needs to be county controlled. We cannot send a Shine fund to a non-party, even by contract, because it's statutorily created to be operated by the county. Now, we can contract out services
Well,
and do all of this, but I would just want to say, like, as far as the actual transferring the Shine account over to them, I don't know that
I'm
that
not,
piece.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm not talking about transferring the fund. I'm talking about transferring the funds that make up the fund.
Okay, yeah,
So-
not the actual trust fund account, just the
Correct.
funds from the account
Yes.
transferring over. Yes, as long as the transfers are occurring within the county, obviously that's what that's for, and the contract would allow us to use those funds to pay team and negotiate all of that. But with regard to the maybe the best solution to this is to, and I think what I have seen is, like, at first where we said we had all of these in one contract, is having separate contracts, even if it's 3 separate contracts with teams, right? I think that that's what
Oh, we
this
got
is.
that, received this today.
And yes, right. And that is a good way of keeping it specific to each individual program and outlining it versus putting it into one big overlying contract. So that way, also that gives you protection. So if something goes awry over here on the Shine contract, we can adjust that without interfering with what's going on in these other programs because they have their own independent contracts. But that idea, I think that's a good initial start for what you guys have got going on here. But as far as how to transfer, I will say this, from a liability, just legal perspective, obviously selling the cars to them or transferring ownership out of the county is what lawyers are going to consider to be a preferred option. But once again, that doesn't mean that you can't lease this or loan these vehicles through a contractual relationship as part of the Shine program. That's going to be a policy decision, obviously, which is what you're trying to make. So I don't know that I'm being very helpful in that category because I pretty much can get you from point A to point B. As long as you tell me which direction you want to go, I can make that contract as give you as much protection as I possibly can under whatever provision that you want to go.
Okay, I just personally need clarification. So what I'm hearing you say is that with, we'll have a contract, which we received this morning from Ms. Mahena, that for Shine, and what I'm hearing you say is that the fund would stay here, the trust, the fund, and then we would be responsible for contracting with the municipalities and building that relationship, or would we transfer that responsibility to team in order to contract and be able to grow the Shine program in regards to serving other municipalities or organizations?
I'm going to say that you are hiring this contractor to do whatever you want this contractor to do and whatever aspects of Shine you want to transfer to that contractor. I'm just saying my only comment was as to the funds. The funds need to be controlled by the county. This is a county program. You can operate it 100% fully. You can transfer every bit of it over to teams, or you can do some type of partnership in between. However you elect that contract, that is a policy decision that does not have a legal opinion grounded in it.
So Lisa, and Jessica, Charles, you guys are going to know more about this than me, but the current Shine account, the fund, if you will, is made up primarily of dollars that have come in from the contracts, and then there's small amount of money that comes in from the fines and fees associated with court cases, right? Now, I understand that small amount from the fines and fees piece may have to go just directly into that particular account, but could the dollars that Oklahoma City pays in, Del City, the zoo, whoever, do those monies have to go into that fund and then be dispersed from there? Or could those funds go directly to team into their account and team manage Shine and just pay for those activities out of their account from that contract. And then we could periodically, my understanding is it's hundreds of dollars a year from the fines and fees piece, not tens of thousands of dollars. Is that accurate?
Correct, yeah. The salaries and.
Yeah, I mean, we could
everything's
always
paid through those contracts.
transfer those dollars over to them at some point, whether it's monthly or annually or whatever. I mean, we're talking very, very little money, but we could transfer that separately. But could they receive those dollars from the contract providers themselves?
Directly from the contract providers rather than depositing that funds into teams. Well, I will definitely take a look at it. I don't see any prohibition on anything that I really don't see a legal prohibition on anything that you all have been discussing. It's just a matter of preference at this point. And then your legal team, can shore up those with the statutes and everything. I don't see there would be any legal prohibition from doing that. The only issue I have is if those Shine funds are what we are using to pay, how is this piece going to look in the contract of what we're going to pay teams for the services to operate Shine?
They would, my contemplation is that's what they would be paid, is that money that comes in from those contracts. I mean, that's how we do it now. Shine is a self-sustaining thing. It's whatever we do as much as we can with the money that we get. I mean, we've heard before that there's more capacity there. If we go out and get more contracts, we could, do some more stuff. I think if the money went directly to team as the provider of these services, I think it gives them more flexibility to right size what they can and can't do at any given time.
Right. My issue is if you're contracting to pay teams, my issue is if there's a dedicated fund, that we are paying, like if they are collecting their own fee and that can be contracted, we will just need some type of accounting piece in there so that, obviously I don't want to commit the county to a contract where they are ordered, required to pay a monthly or quarterly fee to teams, but have no income source or revenues that are directed, or control over knowing how much they're getting paid for that. I would still want to see an accountability piece in the contract, but like I said, I don't see any legal prohibition for what you're recommending. I just would like to know, how is that contract? Obviously we're going to be paying, if the county is going to contract to pay teams something, I want something in the contract where I know that where that money's coming from and who's going to be accountable for it. Because at the end of the day, if it's a Shine program and the accountability of that program is, even if you contract it away, the accountability of how that program operates is going to fall onto the BOCC.
Yeah, and I think go ahead.
Could I just add to that as you guys make this decision? I think originally my thought was that Shine obviously will remain an Oklahoma County program, but you would just contract with us to manage it. And if it stayed within the county, I'm just giving the other side of this. Like if the contracts with the cities and zoo and the different entities remained with the county and we just invoiced the county for the services, you would tell us how much money we have. What the budget is, because it would be contingent upon those contracts. But it may be, at least initially, a better way of accountability, just so that, everybody knows that how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. And if it's a situation where we're invoicing for the services that we have provided, it just may be a better way to create transparency and accountability. If we're just invoicing either monthly or quarterly or whatever rhythm you say, but then the other benefit to having the contracts be with the county is that the county could also make sure that everyone is doing their part, right? That team is providing the management services and the actual direct services at a level that is satisfactory, And the contracts, the contracting agencies are also providing adequate um, funding or whatever it may be.
Okay.
So you would recommend the county contract with those municipalities, with the zoo, and then us let you know, and then you guys handle the services, figure out, you know, what we're going to receive, and then bill for that?
Since we're being completely transparent,
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it shouldn't change, but Monday is the day the county already has the contracts in place, rather than renegotiate these contracts, because I don't know how long that's going to take. And I think we're really hoping that there's going to be as minimal disruption as possible as we take this over. So I don't know if this is something, if the county were able to continue to be the contracting entity for now, maybe we could review how it's going in 3 months, again at 6 months, again at 9 months. And then maybe at the end of the next fiscal year, we may decide that there's a better way to do it. But I think if the county would be willing to maintain these contracts, at least during this initial phase of the transition, it may help with transparency. It may help just sort of create a less disruptive transition.
So
Bite off a little bit less right
Yeah,
now.
right
Yeah,
now. And we
I
could
got
always
you.
revisit.
That's probably a good idea. And then as we move forward, we can adjust fire as needed.
So
We want it to grow. I mean, we want it to be everything, reach its full potential. I just think today this might be a little easier, perhaps.
So logistically, the contracts with Oklahoma City, with the zoo, with Dell City, some other municipalities that have reached out, would those contracts be handled with the chairman's office, since we don't have a department handling it? Does it go back to, I mean, who carries that responsibility in regards to receiving and being the requisition officer? And I mean, then it goes back to what we just took this out of District 2 and put it into court services, and now it would be basically coming back to us if as the chairman's office.
Is Kelly Thomas the requisitioning officer on it now?
Brandy, just because we haven't been able to transfer it yet. But it was always the intention that it would go.
Well, I mean, I think it'll be a contract, and payment and everything on our contracts, similar to this. Well, we do it with the jail trust. That all goes through general government. Our funding goes into there, and our contracts are funded out of there. And Kelly Thomas is the requisitioning officer out of there. So I think it would make sense if we move into a contract scenario, which is what we're doing, that we would move the money. Now, it's a little bit different for Shine because the funding of that is going to be wholly from those contracts that come in, but we're also going to have the situation on the contract for the pretrial service piece, and those are going to be payments that are going to be coming from Oklahoma County, resources. And so what I would think we would do there is have that do a transfer of funds that we've allocated for next fiscal year for court services. We can move whatever the contract amount is for the pretrial piece from that budgeted line item and move it into general government, married up with whatever that contract amount is.
We have not renewed our contracts, just because we've been waiting for this conversation to see if team is going to handle the contracts or if it'll be continued to be handled with the county. And so if that's something that chairman's office responsibility would like to take on, I can do that and move forward if that's the decision that's made today. I just want to make sure I know what the next step is, if that's the decision made.
Okay.
Because we don't have. So I feel like that we moved from OR bonds. I'm so sorry. I feel like we need to stay with team. So in regards to the contract that we received from Ms. Bahana earlier today, did you get a chance to review it.
Mhm.
Um, Colton, did you get a chance to review? Would you like a copy?
Yeah.
I brought a copy for the clerk as well, if you want to go ahead and receive it so we can discuss it.
Motion to receive report, or receive document.
Second.
Okay, are we talking about the team contract to do the supervision piece?
Yes.
Okay.
And so,
Oh, I thought we were buttoning up the Shine piece.
oh, sorry, the shine piece. Yeah, we're on the
Okay.
shine piece.
You're still on.
Oh,
I don't think we haven't decided. What we're gonna do
it was
yet.
just on receiving the
Oh,
document.
receiving, yes.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so on the shine piece with team, I think there were a lot of questions that we had. And so, and I don't know, I know you want this to move along so that way we can finalize these on Monday, but do you just want to go through each section, Jamie and, okay, Chris?
So I think my initial question, first and foremost, we have just in the interest of transparency and to bring everybody up to date, we have offered employment to all existing Shine personnel or existing personnel when the decision was made to transfer to team in the last 30 days. We've offered positions to those staff at their existing salaries. And that's supposed to start July 1st, which is Monday. I just want to be clear. Would we be operating under the assumption that we will be working with the same budget that I'm not, I guess what I'm asking is I'm not clear on what the available funding is in the existing contracts, what the budget is for Shine. That's kind of my first question. And I'm assuming, but then I don't want to get out over my skis. I don't want team to get out over its skis financially. That the same budget is going to be available for this next fiscal year.
So Shine, the way we've operated it is that it has been funded wholly by the contracts. So any of those dollars that we've been bringing in, that's what we've been utilizing to pay for it. If it sounds like we may continue on with the county doing the contracts, negotiating them, but those contracts are going to be specifically for the operation of Shine. So
Right.
all of those dollars, whatever comes in on those contracts, every penny of it would go to you to operate it as long as you guys are operating.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
And submitting, your invoices and all that kind of stuff. But I don't see why in the world we would say we only have one contract and it's for $30,000 for the year, and we say, okay, yeah, we're going to give you 25,000, but we're going to hold 5,000 of it back. I mean, that's we
Right.
receive that money to perform those services, and so I think now if we can keep some in there that is above what your payroll and that kind of stuff is to build the balance so that whenever you do have to, or the county, whoever, has to replace equipment and whatever, there's money in there
Sure.
to do that.
Sure.
So we want to try to build a buffer.
Yep.
But I mean, we've been, Charles, you have a lot to do with Shine in the past, and I think you kind of kept an eye on it. My understanding is we've been bringing in enough money on our contracts to pay for the equipment and the personnel that we've had operating it. So I don't anticipate us having any issues moving forward because you've looked at bringing on the same people at the same rate. So I think your expenses from a salary standpoint would be similar to what ours has been. So I would think that you would have adequate funding to
Okay.
function at the same level that we've been functioning.
Perfect, perfect. There has been some attrition, and it may be that the new hires aren't, because they haven't obviously worked there as long, they may not be coming in at the same level that previous, more tenured staff would be coming in. So as long as there's an assumption that the funding within the existing contracts will be similar or the same for this next fiscal year, that would be the big, I mean, just because they haven't been negotiated yet, that's the one question. And
Jessica, District 2 has had more involvement in this than any of the other districts in the past. Court Service has been really involved recently, but Charles, Jessica, are you guys hearing anything from any of the current folks that we're contracting with that they're wanting to decrease or make drastic changes in the dollar amounts?
You know, whenever we transferred it to Court Services, Grant really maintained those relationships, and so we would just need to reach back out to him with Chris and Jamie in order to let them know, you know, what is happening and have those discussions.
Karen, Brad, since you guys have been over there working, have you heard anything about any significant changes? Okay.
I don't think I've actually been reached out to by some other municipalities, and so is Jamie.
Okay.
So I think there's nothing but opportunity for growth.
And I do think back to what you mentioned earlier, now how it's going to look in the future, we don't know. We may change the way this all operates, but I think at least right now, to start out the next year, I think it would be beneficial for District 2 to reach out and start negotiating those contracts, because you guys do have maybe not the most recent relationship, but you guys have the next most recent relationship. Since the current relationship isn't going to be there, it makes sense for you guys to go ahead and spearhead that since we're on such a short timeline.
And if we're moving forward with the county retaining those contracts and then you billing for services, then we'd definitely be happy to do that.
so I think I have just two other questions. Hopefully they'll be quick. One about the budget. The contract that we received indicates that we would be reimbursed on a quarterly basis. And the question for us from a budgetary standpoint, would we receive funding up front for that first quarter? Or are we going to be expected to front the money for 3 months and then get reimbursed?
This gets into kind of my concerns, why I was thinking if we just had you doing the contracts on it, because it gets out of those types of issues. I think front funding, we wouldn't really have an invoice that our requisitioning officer would sign off on as far as what necessarily we're paying for. So it gets a little bit sticky there. But I understand the predicament it puts you in. Lisa's not here. Ms. Behena, do you see an issue with us front funding a month or whatever? I mean, that might be more of an in the weeds Lisa question, but
I would prefer that.
okay.
I would prefer that. I'm not
Okay.
going to try to know half of the statutes that they know, so.
Yeah, because we've got money in the Shine account right now. I'm sure we do. I mean, they're going to need something to be able to start out. So hopefully we can make something available. But I don't know what we can legally do. So
Maybe, and I'm not holding you to this, I'm just brainstorming, spitballing, that if the budget, for example, just for easy numbers, I'm not saying this is the budget, but for easy numbers, if the budget is $200,000 for the year, for the entire fiscal year, maybe we could divide that up into quarters. If we're going to be reimbursed on a quarterly basis and account for what we will spend it for the first quarter, if there's any way to provide that documentation and then fill the data, the actual documentation you know, as the expenses are being paid. I don't know, but that's the question.
And I don't know how, you know, 'cause I don't fill our accounts payable and I don't handle the budget. I mean, do we receive funding from them every month? I mean, are we billed, is it a fee for service that we receive as we go out? Do we just receive a monthly, an amount from each municipality? Like, I don't know any of those questions.
I don't. Charles, do
So-
you? On the contracts that we have, let's just use Oklahoma City for an example. How are we paid on that? Okay, so it's different, kind of varies. But they, somebody from court services, somebody from Shine in court services, would they send to the city or whatever and say, this is how many hours we worked, and then then Oklahoma City would send us money based on that, but the contract was not to exceed a certain amount, contemplating a certain number of hours at a particular rate, which may be the cleanest and best way for us to do the contract with you guys is an amount not to exceed at a particular dollar rate per hour. And then what you would want to do is figure out what, based on what the employees are currently making, and then what you think maybe they'll make later if, you know, they get raises or whatever, figure out an hourly rate and the number of hours, and then we can put that in our contract that it's, you know, $22 an hour at an estimated 650 hours for the year, so that this contract shall not exceed, and then you just multiply those two numbers. I mean, that may be the best way to kind of start this thing, and then we can always make adjustments as we go.
There's still the opportunity for growth. And so, that's why I'm with you, that I think it would be so much easier if they manage their contracts and were able to figure out what your needs were, if you needed to hire more employees. I mean, that's.
But as we go, if, say, a municipality that is not currently, is Edmond?
No.
Edmond doesn't, so let's use Edmond for an example. If they had something and they were like, we really need you guys to do this for us, and they do a contract with Oklahoma County for an amount not to exceed $50,000 for the year, we can always mid-year amend your contract to add those additional hours. So say that was 150 hours for the year, then we amend your contract from 650 hours to 800 hours at that same rate, and that way it would account for any potential changes.
I just think it's gonna be kind of fluid.
Okay.
And so, so in this contract, it does not list anything in regards to what we're contractually providing you for the service. It also, where I had kind of highlighted with you in number 2, under D and E, I also think it needs to include gardens, since that's another service in addition to trash and graffiti removal. That I saw that needed to be amended. And of course, I provided this to Chris and Jamie about 2 hours before this meeting. So I think that we do need to have a lot more discussions and give them the opportunity to review it, and then be able to discuss it further. The problem is that we're trying to get it on the agenda for Monday. But we could work back and forth between them and the DA and then present it on Monday.
We can have an agenda item on for Monday, discussion and possible action to approve contract for services with Team to provide pretrial service program for Oklahoma County, and then another one to provide Shine services for Oklahoma County, and then another one for community service. We don't have to attach the contracts to the agenda. We just have to have the agenda language on there. We can present the actual contracts and have those discussions in the meeting. We would probably want in that language an amount not to exceed in there.
Yeah, so we just need to hear from you in
but-
regards to work with you on the budgets, and then just need to make sure that Miss Lisa, that we're talking about the contracts, and so you guys have done such a great job in regards to working hard and providing those. And so there's just a lot of things that we still need to discuss between now and Monday, and talk more about budgets and make sure that we have a better understanding about vehicles and equipment. And so are you available to make sure that we can have those finalized by Monday agenda? We can put the agenda item on, but we just have to be able to present them.
Right. I'll be in the office until I'm usually in the office, and I will be there, and I will even work on it on the weekend if I need to. So as long as you get it to me in an email format by Friday at noon, I can probably make sure you have it correctly. I will say that with regard to one of the pieces in the teams, when I was talking about the accountability piece, and I'll be more than happy to help you draft it, but maybe consider having teams come in on a quarterly basis and have a quarter, like a report
Okay.
that shows how much money they are into. That way there's an accountability piece, because once again, my concern is if you can contract every bit of this away, just make sure you have accountability piece, since we're at the end of the day going to be responsible for any audits that come on that.
Yeah.
So,
I was just going to say, I liked the language that was in there before. I don't know for sure if it's in the latest one, but where it discussed the funds coming from that statutory fund, that's what was going to be available. But I think beyond that, we need to get what your estimate is. And I think you had done a spreadsheet that kind of had some of that, but it had like your M&O and stuff all lumped for all the others. So if you separate that out and figure out and we can look at the old contracts to see Oklahoma City, was contemplating so many hours, the zoo, so many hours. And so we can just add up all those hours, put those in there for your contract, and then figure out, take those hours and divide it by what you think your costs are going to be. And so the contract will say so many hours at whatever this dollar amount is per hour, not to exceed a maximum number. And we can always come back and adjust those as we need, but then also make sure that the language is clear in there that the only money that we have available is the money that comes into that one particular fund.
Right. And when you set this contract up, like the use of that, like as generalized language as you can in the body of the contract, and use an addendum, a reference addendum. That way it can be changed out on a yearly basis.
Mhm.
Or when you have to go back and amend it, it's a simple amendment to the addendum. But have it maybe say, the rate of pay will be in accordance with the attached addendum in the main body. That way you leave the bulk of that stuff that could change to an addendum item. That will make it a lot easier in the future for contract renewal, and to also change it if you need to amend it at any time.
okay. And then I can contact the different organizations and municipalities that we currently work with and just let them know what is happening, because we'll need to get those contracts on the agenda for Monday or that following week, so there's not any lapse of service.
Well, and we could also have a special BOCC meeting middle of next week or something if we need to.
Yeah, so we can get that done. We can get that done quickly, so you have an idea.
Well, that might be tough because we got 4th of July next week. I just had a thought as we're talking about these ideas that we want to change in this contract. Lisa, are you making these changes, or are you expecting somebody up here to send those changes to you?
Send me the contract and send me a list. You can just write out the changes and I will do my best. But, like I said, it sounds like we've got a really good base. If you have any notes that you have for any individual section that you want in there, the thing is I can do multiple versions of this contract, but I really do kind of need a collective list.
Mm-hmm.
However I get that list, I'll need a collective list of, say, Lisa, add this, 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 and this to the contract, and I'll come up with the verbiage.
I would, if you don't mind, I would make a suggestion, since it'll be difficult to communicate amongst us in regards, maybe we communicate with Chris and let provide those. And then that way you have a collective from all three of us and can possibly work with Lisa in regards to your suggestions.
Well,
if I could maybe have you all get one of these, and how you use
Highlighter?
Not
did-
the highlighter, but like on the computer where
Okay,
you can
yes.
add your comments and to each and red line in the sections. And if you just gave me, each one, I mean, I could literally color code everybody's suggestions in one
Yeah,
document.
kind of like we did with the Shine policy.
Very much so. And then we can go line by line. You can go line by line and then decide to adopt which ones you want at that point. But like I said, like I said, so many of these things are moving parts. You still have to determine so much with regard to this. You know, we can amend it, but let's try to get it right. But however you decide to do that or circulate that, I can draft based upon what you guys tell me you want in it, but I got to know what those things are. And if there's not a consensus, that's what becomes problematic for us. But I can take all your comments, like I said, and put them,
Well, that's-
give you each a color code for each district and put it in there.
Well, and that's what I was going to try to get at was while we're all here and discussing, if there are items that we are in consensus with, Jessica, since you're doing the contract stuff and stuff, if you could send an email to Lisa on the items that we have a consensus on, that we were saving as much time as possible because we're kind of, down to the wire
Right.
here. The main thing on the Shine contract, other than the global stuff that we're going to maybe look at over time, and so those we don't need to incorporate in this because that's just going to be something we live and learn. Maybe it's a great setup and we never want to change it. Maybe we do. I don't know. But the thing that I think that we should have in there is an amount not to exceed, a dollar amount per hour, and number of hours. I think that'll be the easiest way for us to track what they're doing and spending, and it'll be the easiest way for them to communicate back to us and justify their numbers. Now, you're going to come up with what you think that dollar amount is per hour based upon your expenses and all of that. So I don't have a dollar amount that I want to throw out there. I think they need to work on that. But the dollar amount should be based on what the current contracts we have and just contemplating that we're going to have those moving forward.
I agree. I didn't see, other than just adding gardens, a lot on my end. I know that Chris and I reviewed briefly, and we did have an issue with number 8. Do you want to just real quickly address that? Lisa, do you have a copy of this so you can see?
I don't have I didn't actually have a copy of the contract myself. But what I would suggest you do, if what is needing to be done right now is to go, I mean, you could literally go article, line by line, right here now and say, insert here, include something here. We disagree with it here. That may be a good, kind of like what we did with the Shine policy, just so that we're all on the same page and we're all looking at the same sections and not just jumping from section to section. And that way we know what parts you all agree on and what parts we still need to work on.
We don't have much time, I think, today.
Okay. I know.
So, but while Chris was here, I think it is a pretty big issue in regards to on article. Do you see that 8?
Ownership information.
In regards to the ownership. 7. In regards to ownership information. Do you have yours? I just feel like the way that it's worded conflicts with what they do as an organization and as a second chance organization. In regards to preventing them from providing services, and doesn't really align with their mission. Yeah, go ahead.
So the question for us, and thank you, Jessica, Cody, and Colton, and Lisa, the question for us is, I want to be very clear about this. We do not hire anyone that's not legally allowed to fill that role of employment. Team's very mission is that we believe in second chances. We provide second chances. We are a fair chance employer. If at some point a person who may have something in their background that has been completely and legally satisfied, that would not preclude them from working with individuals who also have lived experience. We just would not want to limit ourselves or hinder our mission in being a fair chance employer. And so I'm not exactly certain why that particular provision was added, because I don't think it was in an original contract. And you know, just kind of what the purpose of it is.
And it was both listed in the Shine contract and in the team contract that we'll discuss. And so that was the only thing that I personally wanted to address. Was there any reason why? Can we strike it?
I don't know, because that was an Aaron ad. I didn't add that to it. The only reason we would have that is when any time you have anybody dealing with county funds or accounting purposes, this may be an auditor requirement. I don't know, but we can verify that, and you can recommend that to be stricken. And of course, if there's a problem with it, we'll let you know. But I don't think it would be, and I think it's really mostly for individuals that are ownership, high management level, that might be handling the money.
That's the way I read that. Chris, if it is an audit requirement, if we clarify that language a little bit more, because when I read it, but it's my law school training as well, I read that as well, this is a CFO or a COO that's managing money decisions, and we have to account for the money. I read it as being limited to that, but I can completely see how this is kind of broad language. So if it is an audit issue, if we kind of button that language up a little bit, would you be more comfortable with it?
Much more comfortable. I you know, at the end of the day, I just want to be very clear, and this speaks to the legality. Like if a person is not legally allowed to fill a position of employment, they will not fill a position of employment. That would put our entire organization in jeopardy. But I just don't want to limit the opportunity to provide second chances when it's appropriate and legal to do so.
Okay, that was the only one I wanted to address.
Yeah, because when it says managing employee, you can think, well, this is somebody that's
they were 18
lower
years
level
old, yeah.
manager or mid-level manager that's not making those kinds of. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Like I read it in the context of Shine, that it could have been a crew chief or
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
apply. So, I don't have any other questions about the Shine contract. Do you, Chris? Do you, Colton? Do you, Cody? I do think we may need just to solidify that we do. Do we need to vote on the fact that we are going to keep the contractual piece, or do you think that's moving forward in regards to that recommendation?
I mean, I think we can make a recommendation that to begin the fiscal year, until we've had more time to assess the situation, that we would continue to be the contracting entity with the various municipalities and programs that we've been working with, and still handle that piece of it, while team still has the opportunity. And I think we would encourage them as the provider to reach out and try to develop even more contracts. Go ahead. You're cold calling.
Yeah.
But
okay. Do you have a second? Was that your motion?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. I need to hit my motion button. My biggest concern is just that we don't get into the middle of situations and make the situation more difficult, number one. And then number two, the liability aspect on ownership of property and also the maintenance thereof. At the yards, I mean, we know we've got folks that are highly trained on all of our equipment and, CDL licenses and all that. And Brad, as our safety director, can attest to this. Mistakes happen, accidents happen, and it's just going to. And when we have, kind of a lot of gray areas in there on the equipment piece, that's, I would like for us to try to come up with a good solution for that moving forward.
Okay, and on to the team contract. I believe we just need to make sure that we've got the correct amount that we will be contracting with you. Was there anything else that you guys would like to speak to? Brad, did you have something to say in regards to the team contract?
Was it not in regard to the contract, but before we get off Shine, because I know we've got a couple things to iron out today. It's more of an operational question.
Uh-huh.
I understand you guys are ironing out the contractual piece and the legalities of the transfer of equipment. We have more of an operational question. We
Sure.
have Shine staff terminating employment this weekend. They're still operational 7 days a week. We'll be collecting the county equipment on Sunday, 6:30. Staff are transitioning to team Monday, which they should be operational with team Monday. How is that transition supposed to work? Do we hand over the keys to the vans to team Monday morning? Is
Not
it,
until after BOCC.
I would like the DA's office to weigh in on,
Yeah.
on our liability and how we can
Yeah,
best
'cause we
protect
got the-
ourselves.
yeah, we just needed to know.
Lisa, I don't mean weigh in on the microphone this very moment. If you have solutions, by all means, but as we're moving forward in the next 48 to 72 hours,
I would suggest not making sure you have a contract signed before.
in place, yeah. So maybe Tuesday,
Perfect. Thank you.
that afternoon. Any other questions in regards to employees for our Shine crew? Okay. You ready to move on to team contract? Chris and Jamie, did you have anything else that you wanted to add as we continue to work through this contract for Monday?
I don't think so. Just what you said, just to make sure that, come Monday, it'll be all right. Come Monday, anyway, it's a Jimmy Buffett.
Start
Yeah.
singing.
Jimmy Buffett. I don't think so. Just other than making sure that if an employee that has that same provision that we just talked about for pretrial, I mean, outside of the accounting aspect or whatever, that we're not limiting ourselves from being who we are and what we do in reference to being a fair chance employer, and then just knowing how much money the actual amount is. Same issues.
Any other questions about the team contract? Cody, you're the BT guru, budget guru, so. lean on you. We're gonna go back and forth.
Yeah. Nothing too specific. I mean, we do need an amount not to include or not to exceed. I'm trying to work around in my brain if we should do a dollar amount per hour and number of hours. I kind of find this to be a little different because the funding is different. So I don't necessarily know that we need to go that route. But from the accountability piece, when we're, doing the reimbursements and stuff, I don't know what level of detail we need in the contract, or if we just do an amount not to exceed. Because, and I think that's probably the best way to do it, is the amount not to exceed. Because, different than Shine, if we have contracting entities that decide they don't want to contract or they back out or whatever, we don't have the funding to do that. And so what they would just have to do is just ramp down those operations. On the pretrial release side, I mean, it doesn't matter. We need to have them, they need to be fully staffed, even if that means that, they only get 2 people this month. They need to be fully staffed at all times to be able to step in and take care of what they need to take care of on that. And we're funding that through general fund dollars. So I think just an amount not to exceed that.
I agree.
And I think it was like one.
Well, I had provided an email. It was 1.4, but taking out that Shine
Yeah, the
employees and benefits is a little over 1.281 is what I came up with, but he's the guru when it comes to budget. So I wanted to verify with him. And then in regards to the accountability, I really liked that idea of them coming and reporting. Would it be best for, since court services provided the report to the advisory committee, for them to report at that place of time, or Vicky, you're the chair.
I guess that depends on where you want the pretrial employees to go, right?
Yeah, okay, we gotta figure.
I mean, that's a whole nother discussion that
Okay.
we've got to have. So, yeah.
Well,
But-
I mean, there's still going to be an advisory board.
I think right now we're discussing the contract for the
Right.
pretrial services,
Right.
not the folks that are staying here. So I think all of those employees are going to team.
That's just the supervision piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I refer to that as. That's
Yeah.
supervision.
Right, and that's the contract that we're discussing right
Yeah,
now,
that-
is that piece.
That
But
contract requires a quarterly report, right? Isn't it quarterly?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
to
Well,
hear,
but to the BOCC,
Okay, to the BOCC.
I
Okay.
think. is
Well, that's
it
what I need the
says.
clarification, because I know we have a community sentencing board that Commissioner Mon serves on, and I didn't know if that was,
community sentencing board is not a county function, that's a
I know.
state function. Are you talking about
I'm just trying to figure out.
like the court services advisory board? They meet when the drug court advisory board and all that. Is that what you're talking about, that piece?
It just was a thought, since you said that we needed some type of accountability, since that's where they were receiving their information currently.
I think what we could do, it's in the contract here that they will present to BOCC. I think if the Court Services Advisory Board, I think if they feel like it would be beneficial to hear from you guys on whatever interim, I think you said rhythm earlier, I like that. Whether it's at every one of their meetings or twice a year, I think they could request them to come, and I'm
Okay.
sure that you guys would be willing to go there. But since that's not a BOCC, I mean, they do make recommendations up to BOCC, so we could require it. But I think having them come in to BOCC is sufficient in the contract language. And then if the advisory boards want you to come and visit, then you can always do that as well.
Okay.
Ms. Bahena, you sit on that advisory board. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I guess that's what I was just trying to get clarity on. So they'll give Shine on the supervision piece. We'll get, not Shine, I'm sorry, team will give on the supervision piece a report to the BOCC,
Mhm.
and then the advisory board will ask, hey, look, we need to know how many FTAs there were last quarter.
Okay.
And we can just do that independently.
Okay.
But the
Good.
formal reporting will be to this body,
Perfect. Okay.
okay?
Karen,
Yeah,
did you have a question? She was waiting from the back.
Showing transition that Brad asked. Our current staff person that's going to team, effective at 3:30 on Sunday, he will no longer be a county employee. But there's still going to be participants showing up Monday morning when he's effective going to team. So who's going to take care of those participants that show up at 7:00?
We may, I mean, I hate to do this, but it may be one of those situations to where we have to tell participants that we're not going to be operating on Monday.
I'm not sure how they communicate that to the participants because they never know how many is going to show up. It could be 10, could be 2, could be 15. So that is my concern. If you have 15 participants down here showing up and there's nobody to go do community service with.
Well,
If that happens, I mean, we want to be working Monday, I promise you we do, but if that happens, we can communicate with the participants in real time. Like, we can work over the weekend to try to determine who has signed up. But then also the day of, if they show up, we can be present. We normally would pick them up and just say, sorry, we're waiting the contract. We'll let the judges, the powers that be, know that you were here. And that it wasn't your fault that you weren't able to get your hours today, and we'll work with you to reschedule a time for you.
Chris, I think part of the problem is, unless the situation's changed, I don't think people pre-sign up. It's just to show up.
Don't.
Because that's what I had mentioned before, because we didn't know how many employees we needed. And then the DA's office had recommended having certain number of supervisors per number of people. So I think, and now you guys are running it, but what I've kind of thought is you have, based on your workforce that's available, you say we have 20 slots available in these windows, first come, first serve. I mean, maybe do it through an app or whatever, and then you know who's going to be. And then if you have somebody that just shows up, well, if somebody else wasn't scheduled or somebody else didn't show up that was scheduled, then they could go. But if you got 20 signed up and all 20 of those people show up, and you got 2 or 3 extras, like, we only have 20 slots available, or whatever the number of slots are. But it would help in this kind of a situation. But it's just a come and go kind of deal, I believe.
I believe Hannah has a
They're coming to
suggestion.
my reception anyway. So, I mean, my reception is 10 feet from where they're at now. We'd be happy to take their information and inform them that unfortunately court services isn't operational today, but that someone will be in touch and to get their information and gather that for you.
I'm confused with that because they meet down here across the street from McDonald's. Most normally, that's where they pick them up at. When did that change? Because last I knew, they were still meeting across from McDonald's. Yeah, they're still picking them up and meeting at McDonald's. And
Thank you for the offer.
if they don't have time to put enough of them in the vehicles, then the participants drive their own vehicles to do the jobs. So if they're suggesting they could have a couple people there, I just don't want any of these participants to get in trouble with the judges.
Well, that's a good point, and we had gone through a lot of these different situations when it moved from District 2 to court services, and we kind of vetted through some of the policies and stuff. That way we can kind of make it a little more polished. That we may want to, I don't necessarily know that we need to, I mean, if we want to include it in the contract, we can. If not, at least make those available to team as far as what we've kind of put in place. I think there's, yeah, I think there's, that was kind of a work in progress, and there's probably some stuff that you guys might want to tweak and whatnot. Kind of like this, you know, the sign up and everything. But
Well, I think Chris Still, if I'm not wrong, Chris, you're planning on meeting them in the morning out there at ACOG, and he's going to ride along for a little bit. He's going to visit with that employee that's going to try to see the process, and he may have a clearer picture on that for Monday as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, any other questions regarding the Shine contract or the team contract? Are we ready to go back to, and I apologize for your wait, the OR employee discussion? And so we've heard from Brandy, and we'd love to hear from you, Ms. Behanna, in regards to all the work that you've done currently.
Well, I wish we were having these discussions like a month ago, right? After we originally tried to figure out what pieces everybody was filling in, it would have been nice if we all sat down, because and tried to hammer it out then. Because what's happened now is that I got calls, panicked about this program, court services pretrial program, has to cease July 1, about 2 weeks ago. So we have been scrambling, trying to put pieces in place, because I'll say it once and I'm going to say it again. Pretrial release and the law enforcement function is a critical element of anybody getting out. And so we've had numerous meetings and phone calls. I originally fronted the idea of these county employees going to the detention center because I knew some of them wanted to keep county benefits. But as I started getting into this, I heard from some county employees that are in that pretrial release group, the law enforcement function, is that they didn't want to work in the detention center. Okay? As I said before, this is a critical piece. I can't be missing any employees, because if employees resign, which some of them have already, and I don't get an NCIC report, nobody's getting released from the jail. And the numbers are going to go through the roof. They're already up 200, right? So, you know, this is not a piece that you do ad hoc at the last minute, which is what we're doing. There are 3 critical functions of what pretrial release does. We have the law enforcement function of running NCIC reports and writing summaries, because, right, the judge, the PD's office, and team can't see the NCIC reports. So somebody has to take those NCIC reports, digest the information, and summarize it so that that information gets to the judge and the stakeholders that need that information. So that's one piece. Team is going to do the supervision piece. I feel like that is functional, and that's probably the only part of this that's functioning right now, because they were able to take hold of it and make it work for us. And quite honestly, I don't think there was any supervision going on of anybody on a conditional bond in Oklahoma County. Breaking news. So I feel good about that piece. But there's a third piece, and that is the GPS monitoring. Okay? And let me break that down real quick. Team can do GPS monitoring, and I think they have been doing GPS monitoring for what I'm calling the lower level people on GPS monitoring. People that have been in the treatment courts, that have gotten a sanction, they get a GPS monitor. I think Team's been doing that. There is another level of GPS monitoring that has to stay with court services or this pretrial release deal. Those people are very high risk defendants that need to be monitored by somebody like Kathy. Kathy has been doing it for years. The reason for that is because some of those people that Kathy is monitoring, these high-risk defendants, Kathy communicates often with law enforcement about what's Vicky Behenna doing today? What's Cody doing today? And so they have that relationship with Kathy. And while Team has agreed to go ahead and say if law enforcement calls Team and says, I need to know where Vicky Behenna is, they provide that information. But this class of defendants are different, okay? And I wish I could give you more detail. You're just going to have to trust me that they're different. And so that part of it, Kathy, and I threw Nicole in there too, because look, what we've had in court services for so long is siloed employees that only did one function. And so somebody quit, somebody went on vacation. I don't know what was going on. I am right now requiring every person that's booked into Oklahoma County Jail, I don't care if you're getting out on an OR bond or you're getting out on conditional release or conditional bond, or whether or not you're GPS monitoring, everybody is going to get an NCIC report, because you can't just look at the charges against the person and make a decision of their dangerousness or risk of failure to appear. That requirement that the pretrial services people do NCICs on 30 or 40 people that are booked in daily at the detention center has put them in a little bit of a bind, because I have one person now, Brian, that's pulling NCICs, okay? The idea of these people, these employees in this critical pretrial service and GPS space come to the DA's office was because I felt horrible that these employees were not given any direction. They were calling Karen and Brad and me, what's going to happen to me? I mean, it's 2 weeks and we're counting down. Nobody knows what's happening. And so I said, look, if you guys don't quit, I'll take it. I'll take it. You'll become employees of mine. It doesn't matter for that function if the employees are located at the sheriff's department, the detention center, or the DA's office. But dear God, let's make a decision so those employees know what they're doing and the county doesn't hurt and have an increase, substantial increase of people that should be released on pretrial release sitting in the Oklahoma County Jail because we can't get our stuff together. Because that's what it feels like right now. You know, Brandy was gracious enough to do this and say, look, those employees can come here. What if we lose half of those employees? And here's the other part, in all due respect. I don't want these employees available for other functions. I don't. Running NCIC reports and doing these summaries, they get there at 5 o'clock in the morning, they leave at 1. They're getting the summaries we need timely, like 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. But that's not the only wave, right? I mean, there might be other people that are booked in that they're constantly going to need to pull NCICs for and give us reports on or summaries on. Right now, we're down to about 48 hours in making decisions about that's an OR, that's a conditional bond, and these are the conditions. That timeline has to stay in place. We can't go 2 weeks again or 4 days that somebody sits in the county jail without an NCIC being pulled and a summary being taken. So I say all that because I just want there to be a decision for, not just for me, right? I mean, this is obviously an important function in the DA's office. I have 2 dedicated ADAs that do nothing but review charges and NCIC summaries to make decisions about the safety of our community on who gets out and who stays. But they're going to be able to continue to do their job. But for the employees, those 5 employees that are affected by our indecision, make a decision about where they're going. I originally asked the BOCC to let those employees stay as a smaller core court services group until we could work out these decisions. I was told that's not going to happen. That's what created all of this chaos. So, and again, I don't know. I mean, I understand one employee has already turned in her retirement papers. She can't even take it anymore. We have one employee that went to college and got a master's degree, I think, based upon the programs that the county has. She has to stay with the county a year. Is she going to have to pay back all of her schooling? We have other employees that are like, I don't know whether to turn in my retirement papers to the county because I'm now going to become a state employee. But please just make a decision. Maybe the decision today is to keep that core group where they are until we can find out what we're doing. But please make a decision today.
I've been under the assumption that we were in that situation right there. When you said that you've been told that we've decided that that's not going to be the case, that's news to me. I don't. I'm not saying that you haven't heard that. I'm just saying that our office, to my knowledge, has not been in the loop on that. I thought we were still in the, hey, these employees need to know that they're going to team. These employees need to know this or that. And the ones that are staying law enforcement understand, hey, listen, you're going to have a job. It's just a matter of whether you're going to stay here as a county subset or go over to the jail or go to the DA's office. Your paycheck, who it's coming from, may change the name on there, but your job isn't going to. That's
true. That's true. I mean, all of that is absolutely true. But whether or not they're a county employee or a state employee makes a difference to some of those employees. And like I said, when I got the word that the drop dead date was July 1, we've been running around in circles trying to get this done.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't know why we had a drop dead date of July 1 for those employees. That's what I'm saying. I'm just not aware that we had that. Now, I know we were trying to hit a drop dead date of July 1 for those moving over to team, but the others, I wasn't aware that we had that.
That was the message that I got, that
Okay.
July 1, they need to be somewhere. I mean, we spent hours on the phone with OLETs trying to get cost. I mean, what's the monthly rate? What's the transfer? I mean, it's just been chaos, absolute chaos. So, I mean, if it is the decision of the BOCC that small core, those 5 court services employees stay as is right now until we can figure out what we're doing, that's great with me. But I mean, somebody needs to communicate with those people. They don't have any idea if they're staying county employees, they're going to the detention center, they're going to the DA's office.
But I
It's
think
just
that's
created
what we need to
chaos.
decide, so they do have that clarity, and they don't have the concern moving forward. We need to decide where they're going to be located. So, Karen, I know that you've been working with them.
Well,
Because I feel like from what I've experienced a lot of anxiety hearing from those employees in regards to like what you said, Vicki. They're either going to stay with the county and have their insurance, which is a big concern is losing, or they're going to go to the DA and work for the state, and they're going to lose those benefits and that retirement. And so but on the flip side, the only way that technically that they would be able to, if we're trying to find the final placement, is to go to the detention center, but that's not where they want to work. And so I think that that's the balance of trying to determine, what is the best thing for the employees and, for that department.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest concerns that I have, of course, is that we're going to be able to have a situation where we're doing the job right. But I think that can probably happen in any of those entities. If they do transfer out from the county, we've got a $70,000 payout, I think is what I heard. But the biggest thing is, to me, the employees losing county insurance and the ones that aren't vested yet that are getting close. And then we've got an employee that has been utilizing the education reimbursement that could be in jeopardy, and not because they chose to, but chose to do something. They, in their mind, they're going to uphold their, obligation, but they're not going to get reimbursed. I think that if we move it to the trust and all of those negatives that I just mentioned go away, they're able to keep county insurance. The vesting is not an issue. They're still in our retirement, and I'm sure that the education piece would. Do they participate in that?
Yes, it's because it's a
Okay.
county policy. You do tuition reimbursement, Randy.
Well, but even if they're not currently doing it, it's available
Right.
for them to do. So we wouldn't have to, if they stayed, I don't think that they would have to repay that.
We were going to suggest that we waive that requirement because this employee is currently on FMLA. And to us, it's not her fault that she's going to the DA or going to the detention center or whatever, that we would require her to do that.
Well, there's lots of things that I would like us to do. I would like us to transfer all the property that we have for Shine over to Team, but we've heard from Lisa that may not be legally possible. I don't know, based upon the way that statutory language was set up on the provisions allowing counties to offer education reimbursement, whether we have that option. Even though we think this is the best thing to do for the employee, I'm not discounting that at all. But just because that is the case doesn't mean that we can legally do it. But if they are over at the trust, I don't think that is an issue at all. I also think if they're over at the trust, in the jail, there's individuals over there that are already pulling inlets, the NCICs. They're already licensed and trained in that. So if however many employees we have, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6 that are performing this function, if we have people call in sick, if we have people out on FMLA, if we have any of that stuff, Brandy may be able to utilize her staff that is licensed to do NCICs to bridge and fill gaps. If we have some of the folks, let's say we have 4 people that are doing this on, that is their job. But if something happens and 3 of them are down with the flu, then does it grind to a halt? Or has Brandy cross-trained some of the other folks there that are already licensed to see that material so that they could step in for a day or 2 or 3 days to fill that gap? There's the potential that we've got some ability to be a little more flexible if they're over there. Is that?
I was just going to say, don't forget the summary, because NCIC pools is fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can pull that on 30 or 40 people, probably in 45 minutes, I don't know, depending on how bad their criminal history is. But it's the summary, that's the piece that takes it. And then when I say a summary, what's happening right now is Kayla is going and doing polycom visits with individuals. It's not doing an in-depth interview like Team does, but getting what is their name, what is their address, who are their relatives, and just trying to get that very basic, first of all, identifying information. Knowing you need this what.
Yeah.
So that piece is the piece that takes it.
That takes a while.
And-
Today was her
and
last
that-
day.
And
So,
there,
Sydney has been cross-trained and knows how to do that piece now, just to make sure that we don't lose anything in the cracks here.
And as we move forward, if they are down at the jail under the trust, those folks that are licensed to pull NCICs, I'm sure they could be cross-trained to where it's like, this isn't your regular job. You're doing all these other things, but should we need you to do this, this is how you do the summary. This is how you do all of this. And so they could step in. And I appreciate, where people want to work and don't want to work. I appreciate that. But to me, the insurance, the vesting, all of that matters more because we're making a decision about the long term, and we can't just say, okay, employee A doesn't want to go down there, so we're going to make a decision that's not in the best interest in the long term for the county because a employee or two employees don't want to work down there instead of working somewhere else. I get it, I understand, but to me, the insurance, the vesting, the being able to get the job done, all of that stuff is more important because we can't hit everything. We can't tick every single box and there's something that we're not going to be able to accomplish.
And to that, I have another alternative solution for your consideration. I have not been involved in these conversations, but first of all, from an HR perspective, with regard to employees, when we say this employee is going to go to team or this, remember these individuals are county employees. The decision that the county makes is to RIF. They give them a notification that your position is no longer there. However, as we are letting you know that this position is available over here at Teams or this position is available over here. The fact of the matter is you've got individuals right now currently not knowing if they've been RIFed and they're not going to be county employees or they're going to go someplace else. An alternative, to being a DA employee and having to pay out those benefits or going and working over there with Brandy and being trust employees, okay, the other alternative, which I don't know has been addressed or maybe even suggested, there are available and state agencies do it all the time. There is a way to do an MOU where you do an employee share program. These individuals could stay county employees, be housed at the district attorney's office under a contract or an MOU for supervision under Vicki Behenna, where they stay county employees. They'd have no change in their benefits, no change in their salary. They just report someplace else. And then Vicki Behenna reports to you with regard to the supervision of these county employees because this is a county function for the county DA. Now, that leaves them as county employees. And that is a possibility that will solve, I think, the majority of your problems. The thing is, though, like I said, I don't offer up advice I'm not asked about, and this is the first time that I have been involved in these conversations, but I can promise you that we can probably make that happen with an MOU where they show up and they are still county employees. Then you don't have to worry about any of their programs, about their vesting, about who they are. We just make a very clear-cut contract or MOU for employee share, and it happens all the time in state government. There's individuals that will work for the Department of Education, but they're housed at the Department, of Health because they're doing early childhood programming. Okay, but there's a share program for the employee, so that can happen.
State to state.
Huh?
State agency to state agency.
Right, but I'm fairly confident the statute that allows for that provides it for at any county level of government and allows MOU sharing between any county government, between state and county, county and state, city and state, city and county. So I can look into that for you too as an option, but that may be the solution that solves this problem.
I think, and I appreciate the outside the box thinking, but I think it adds unnecessary steps, and then it's, okay, you're responsible for doing this, but you're under somebody else's supervision, but you work for this other person. And what happens when you're an employee of the board of county commissioners and they want you to do certain things, but you are under the supervision of another elected official that's not a county elected official? And then where do they, how do they decide what they're going to do? And the other thing is, and if Ms. Behenna was interested in entering that contract, that would be awesome. but we create a situation that when Ms. Behenna decides to retire and not be DA again, and we've been operating like this, and the new DA says, I'm not interested in that, I don't want to do that, now we're going back and trying to recreate the wheel when we could have ironed out all of this stuff in the beginning.
That's a very good point.
That is true, and every bit of this can change tomorrow. But once again, this is an annual contract to contract thing. But that at least is the way to keep them county employees. You know, so like I said, it's an option that's out there for you, and it is not something that's unheard of, and it is done regularly in other jurisdictions.
And I think if they did transition over to the detention center with them not losing their vesting, we're not having to worry about payouts, we're not having to worry about the tuition reimbursement, anything like that. If we make that determination, we don't have to make the transfer immediately. We can communicate, hey, your county employee, we're going to make sure that we're not trying to put a square peg into a round hole. We're going to make sure that everything is ironed out. We have everything good to go before you actually do the transfer. But just know whether it's a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so that we can, get them the appropriate notification of what we're going to do. They can stay, as they have been, but then they would at least know this is where we're moving to. Right?
And I think if that was the approach that we took, Karen, and if I remember visiting with you, the only contract that we have that we need to renew immediately is the ankle monitoring, and that could be for a 30-day.
Well, it sounds like what Ms. Behenna had mentioned earlier on the ankle monitoring, we're going to need that moving forward, not just 30
But it
days.
would be through
because
it would be their contract.
Yeah, if it went over to them, yeah, you're right.
But we could do it for 30 days to.
I think there's a
transition.
30-day.
Yeah.
There is. They're going to work with us. We went ahead and signed the GPS Allied, I believe what it's called, Allied. That way, we didn't want that to fall through where
Okay.
she wouldn't be able to do GPS on Monday if we need to extend that out.
I just wanted to make sure we address any contracts that
Yeah.
would prevent us from providing services.
Right. Stanley Printer, that's a contract that we'll need to do if we're going to extend them out. The Connexus will need to be gone ahead and signed by the BOCC if we're going to extend it out. Also,
Why do we need the Connexus?
because that's what they told me that they use for their database to make notes on the clients and participants.
Yep.
Right, but that's different than the piece that we're doing over here, working up.
Well, I was told by the people that work up here on the 9th floor that they use Connexus. And that's why that contract would have to be renewed if we're going to extend them past June 30th as employees, because they'll have to have that to continue doing their duties. So we'll need to get them all those approved and get them for the meeting on Monday.
No, not necessarily. Like I said, we don't have to run with our hair on fire and make mistakes here. If we tell the employees over there, you're a county employee today, at the end of next week, we're gonna transfer you to the DA's office, or we're gonna transfer you to the jail trust. They know what's gonna happen, and we can do it orderly. The team thing, we've had weeks. They've been talking to those employees. There's things in line. So I think right now we can rush and try to get everything done for July 1. I think with these employees, we don't have to rush through and make a mistake on contracts or whatever.
Well, how are they going to do their jobs if the contract's in June 30th at midnight, if they're still county employees and need those vendors to do their jobs?
So you're saying on July 1?
Yeah, June 30th, these contracts that we're talking about, they end. And we're going to have to get them renewed if they're going to continue doing some services for a while. Nothing falls to the wood here. Because the Allied, I knew she knew that we're still trying to talk what's going to happen with that. So we just need to kind of contact them. But, Stanley's going to have 30 days. We're going to have to notify them. They just won't have the tools they'll use.
I get that, because we were going down the road of, on the GPS monitoring, going ahead and doing that, and then we can exercise the cancellation provision. What I was talking about was the Connexus. I don't understand how and why they are needing to use that piece. And it could just be ignorance on my part as to what all that software is doing. But my recollection that was a pretty robust conversation about going to that Connexus software. And my understanding was that was more on the pretrial release, making notes in there. They showed up for court, they didn't show up for court, they did this, they didn't do that. That's what Connexus is. Am I not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, huh?
Connexus is Joel, but on the adult side.
Right. So I don't know why the folks that are pulling NCIC, doing the preliminary interview
Right.
and investigation and giving that to the judge, I don't understand why they need that.
Well, I believe Brad was told that it was also for the conditional bond, but they had been using it. Is that what y'all find out? For the case management?
Well,
Okay.
the only thing I want to know is, Ms. Bahena, when you talked about the GPS piece, that Kathy or whoever is performing her role in monitoring those folks, that's the only position that I can even contemplate maybe needs that software, but I don't even know that they do. But the rest, I can't imagine.
Yeah,
needing it.
and let me explain a little bit further, okay? Connexus, my understanding from court services employees is that Connexus was used exactly how you described. Notes were put in, sent an email to Vicki Bahena, she's got court in 2 weeks at 9 o'clock in front of judge, whatever, okay?
Mhm.
That's what Connexus, and it would send text messages to people saying, hey, look, your court is next week. So with the supervision piece moving to team, they already have that functionality,
Mhm.
okay? For some reason, when people were on OR bonds here, we were making people check in. And let me just make sure everybody understands. An own recognizance bond is a bond without conditions.
Right.
You're just out on your own recognizance. You don't have to check in weekly. But that's, I think, what some of the people on OR bonds were doing. We've had a pretrial meeting and found if we feel we can trust somebody to be on an OR bond, they don't need to be calling weekly to check in. If something happens in the future, they pick up another charge, that might change. So I agree with you. But look, again, I've not had that specific conversation with that core group of pretrial services or court services. I don't know how they use it other than the way that Karen just described it, and that is to put their notes in when they were doing supervision. But they're not doing supervision now.
If I can add, I don't want to speak out of turn, but if it's a matter of just having a system to do the automatic text message reminders for court dates, we're happy to put those people in our systems to get those text message reminders for the OR bonds. The ORs, like she said, don't require any supervision or follow up on conditions or anything like that. And we're already going to be responsible for doing that quarterly report that has to outline how many people were released on OR bonds and did they show up for court. So we're already going to be following their court process in terms of a statistical kind of method. So we're happy to do that if that cuts down on that need. And then we also use Allied Universal for our GPS units. And so you may check with Allied because I believe they have a component of their system that allows for case management notes. So if that's something that Kathy is needing, you could potentially explore if you wanted to, just adding that to the Allied contract.
Okay.
Just to describe, a few of the staff members are watching this meeting and sent me a message. So just an example of how Connexus is being utilized for the GPS monitoring. One of our staff members uses it for management of the clients and keeping in contact with them by text. So something she provided.
That's great.
So then I think we could renew that contract and then we can look and see how much use we need for that moving forward. And then when they go over to the DA or the jail trust, there can be a determination of whether that software, they want to utilize that or they want to use something different or whatever. But we'll have an early termination provision in the contract, correct? For 30 days? Okay. Yeah, then just put those on for Monday on the BOCC. I mean, I don't know what you guys' thoughts are, but
Yeah,
that's what I think.
agree. That's what we needed to do. I think the only other questions that Karen had, other than deciding where they're going, was just the all the files, and I wanted to address that while Lisa was here.
Okay. Community Service has saved files back to 2012. There are approximately 18 to 20 file cabinets with nothing but community service history. My question is, they're taking the program. Do they get all those files? And do they need all those files? They're in file cabinets, so file cabinets are county property. Are we going to have to box all that?
I think it can stay here. They're a service provider for us for this particular program. We can keep those files.
Where would we keep them?
Well, we can figure that out, but we do not have a records retention policy.
Right, we
now,
don't, because we're
technically, so
working on that.
we cannot get rid of them.
Right. Okay. That was the question
Even
for
if
that.
legally, by statute, you could, we can't.
Okay. What about the CBR files, the conditional bonds? They have 5 file cabinets full of those. I think you've gone through them a little bit. Same thing. Do they need to go to them, or do we need to keep them?
Do you guys need information from those files?
Yes, she's been going through them.
I would say if we could have the files for anyone who is still active in those programs, I don't see a need for us to have records on people who were in it in the past. I would just say anyone who is still active in community service or conditional or OR bonds is what we would need.
Lisa or Ms. Behenna, do you guys see an issue with us turning over those files of individuals that are still currently in the OR conditional programs, all of those, moving those over? They said that they don't need access to folks that are no longer active, but the ones that are still in there, you see any issue with us releasing those files? I didn't think so.
There's no issue turning the files over, but when you write the contract provisions, just make sure all of these files for our county property. So even though they are in the possession of our contractor, they still retain county property. They're going to be governed by any record retention policy of the county and can be recalled back to the county at any given time. So they can't be destroyed. So they will be a custodian, but they're still belong to the county.
And that's going to be the case for the future documents as well, not just the past. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that point was brought up, because any of these records that are going to be maintained or part of the teams for any of these programs are going to be county documents. They are just going to be in possession and control of our contractor.
Yeah, I would like you, whenever you send the email to her on the contracts, to include that. And if there's any documentation as such that is also there for Shine, that if we need that language in that contract as well, to include that.
I do have one more question. There are a lot of supplies and supply cabinets out at juvenile where court services has been. There's drug testing equipment, there's gloves, paper stacks. They'll never need to order legal pads again. So what do we do with those when we vacate juvenile?
Oh, Hannah wants them.
Honestly, we could utilize most, if not all of that you didn't want to transfer somewhere else. And we'd be happy to move the furniture, do whatever you want.
They're in your building.
Right.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. Is there a 10th of the law that says that she can't do that, Lisa? I'm just kidding.
You know, it can be done.
Yeah.
It's county property, so however you
Well, a lot of that stuff is probably not inventoried items, so.
There's many items. There's 15 items that we found so far that should have been on inventory that were bought since 2019. They have not been on inventory, and they do not have inventory tags on them.
So whoever that stuff goes to, let's make sure that they get inventory.
Yes. Well, we're working on that because we need to get that done, and Brad's been diligent looking for everything, as well as Chewy, the shredding machine. That, I don't know, juvenile may want that, or OR bond may want
I
that.
mean, I say follow proper disposal requirements as listed in Oklahoma state statutes.
Okay, that's what we need to know. Thank you. Brad, did we forget anything? Do what? Okay, that's all we had this time. Thank you.
Those are all my notes. So it's the pleasure of the meeting.
Colton, what say you?
On location? Employees. I think the easiest one probably is detention center. That's my thoughts personally, but open to your guys' thoughts as well. You guys more in the weeds of it.
What say you?
So I agree with your thoughts in regards to making sure the employees can continue their benefits and I love the idea if we would have had it and it wasn't an annual agreement in regards to making that decision to where it could have been, you know, a shared situation, but I believe that the commissioner would go with it.
Okay. Ms. Bahena and Brandy, are you guys comfortable with that? I know that you wanted us to make a decision and we needed to, and I appreciate spurring us along and getting us to this point. Are you guys both comfortable with that?
With the employees going to the detention center?
Yes.
I mean, I think what will happen is if that's what you all decide, then Brandy and I need to talk about the pieces, because we've all been having discussions about what the pretrial release group is doing. Brandy hasn't been part of that because, again, I was kind of told, hurry up, get this done, Vicki. And so we were on this path of them going to the DA's office. So we just need to have a conversation about what we have kind of outlined, pulling the NCICs by 5 o'clock in the morning on everybody that's booked in, making sure whoever that person's going to be gets those reports so they can do the summaries. And then as we keep up with it during the day, as people come in, if we can pull NCICs and then getting that background. So am I comfortable with it? I feel sorry as hell for these employees because I've been telling them you're coming to the DA's office. I mean, I feel that I'm sure they feel like ping pong balls. Do I think it's going to harm the program? I don't think so.
I will make a motion to make a recommendation to BOCC that the individuals that, Ms. Benhana, what is the nomenclature that you use when you're talking about that group?
Well, I call it the core law enforcement function.
Okay.
I've used those interchangeably, but the core pretrial release unit.
Okay. I make a recommendation that we recommend to BOCC that the core piece that is law enforcement related from the court services department be transferred as soon as possible. No particular date. I think we need to make sure that Ms. Bahena has had plenty of opportunities to have a conversation with Ms. Garner to make sure that everything moves smoothly, but at least so those folks have an idea of what's going to happen, that those employees be transferred to the trust pending the trust's willingness to accept those employees. It sounds like Ms. Garner is willing to accept them, so it's my motion.
I'll second that, second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. We were old school earlier, so.
Before we move to the next agenda item, I do want to thank everyone's time today and everyone's efforts in putting together these contracts and discussions with all the employees. And a huge thank you to Karen and Brad for supervising leading up to these coming days in regards to decisions that we're making. So thank you for all your hard work and efforts, everybody. So we'll move on to number 4, which is the discussion and possible action to recommend utilizing remaining project funds in ARPA Project 10031 JJC Courtroom Lobby to cover remaining change order needs for contract trace cameras for the lobby in an amount of $5,864.66. From what I understand, they already have the amount in their budget for this, and in a previous policy and governance, we had told them just to go ahead and do a change order for this portion, but for your furniture pieces to try to handle that within your current budget. And so
Motion to approve.
motion to I will motion and I'll second.
Your easiest decision today.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Is there any citizen participation? Seeing none. Any board comments?
No, thank you.
None.
I will just say, thank you to all of our court services employees for your patience as we make this decision and try to do the best thing for you and for the county. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.